First one was a situation in which a gentleman named Louima was attacked by the police in a horrible way. And from the first moment I was told about that by the police commissioner, who was then Howard Safer, with Howard Safer, we reassigned the entire police precinct to force the police to testify, by and large, to tell them no blue wall of silence. This is intolerable.
Was that
you can't
case
do it.
misrepresented then?
No, that case wasn't. You can think about another case. And the police officers were prosecuted and put in jail. And one of them is still serving a sentence of something like 20 or 25 years. And the police gave the evidence against that police officer. The second case was the Diallo case.
That was the case.
Mr. Diallo was shot 41 times by the police.
Yeah.
The immediate reaction was that this must be a totally criminal act by the police. When I got the facts, I didn't know. I didn't know if it was criminal or it wasn't. I didn't know if it was a terrible mistake or a crime. And I had a rule about the police. My rule was I gave them the benefit of the doubt. And the benefit of the doubt meant, gosh, I wasn't giving them much more than you give criminals, right? You give criminals.
You would listen to them.
I would not conclude they were guilty unless I had the proof that they were guilty.
Okay.
Maybe being a prosecutor, I used to do that for organized criminals. I'd have to give them the benefit of the doubt because you have to prove guilt before you can assume guilt. I can't say the entire city, but much of the city just assumed guilt. Case went to trial in Albany because they changed venue before a jury of 8 whites and 4 blacks, and the police officers were acquitted. That's the case that created the misunderstanding. Police officers made a terrible mistake, and a jury concluded that, and the Clinton Justice Department looked at the case and didn't take it up as a civil rights case. It sounded terrible when you first say it, but when you examine the facts, they made a terrible mistake. They thought that a gun was being pointed at them, 1 police officer shot, they thought bullets were coming back at them, and then the other police officers shot. They were all innocent and found innocent. And that created a lot of problems because there were people, not just in the African-American community, but throughout the city that felt these police officers, I thought what they felt was the police officers should be convicted before a trial.
Yeah.
And I thought I didn't say they were innocent. I didn't stick up for them in that sense, but what I said was they're entitled to a trial. They got one and they got acquitted. The third incident, the Dorisman incident, was a situation in which a man was beating up a police officer. That was proven. Police officer wasn't even charged. And that created some misunderstanding as well.
Okay. Well, we'll leave this. You certainly are eloquent in defending your point of view. I want to get to the subject of 9/11. We're going to talk more about your term as mayor in other respects, but this was, let's face it, the pivotal moment in a way, although it was at the very end, so important to the life of the city and to your reputation, your future reputation. It was seen that you had reacted with an extraordinary amount of both alacrity and calm at this moment. And I wonder if you could, first of all, tell us where you were when you heard, what you did first, and what in general you think propelled you to react as well as you did in this crisis, unforeseen crisis.
It was a beautiful fall day. I was at the Peninsula Hotel having breakfast with 2 friends of mine, my counsel, Dennison Young, and Bill Simon, who was considering running for governor of California at the time. That's what we were talking about. And it was a kind of a slow day because it was primary day in New York City. The Republican and Democratic parties were voting for whoever would succeed me because I was term limited. So we thought it wouldn't be a busy day until the end of the day when we started closing the polls. And so I had breakfast, much longer breakfast than I usually had, and I was going to head down to City Hall. As I finished breakfast, which would be close on about 9 o'clock, about the time the attack took place or right after it, a police officer came up to my counsel, Dennison Young, and whispered in his ear. Denny looked alarmed, came over to me and said, there was a twin-engine plane that hit the North Tower of the World Trade Center, and there's a terrible fire going on. We better get down there. And I said, okay, Denny. I said goodbye to Bill, and we got in, and Bill said, God bless you. He must have had a premonition that it was worse than the way it was described. We walked out, and I looked up in the sky, and I saw the beautiful blue sky, not a single cloud in the sky, and I said to myself, this can't be an accident.
You said it right then
Can't be an
and there.
accident. I didn't know it was a terrorist attack for sure, but I said it can't be an accident. It's too beautiful a day. No plane is going to get off course and hit the World Trade Center.
Yeah.
It's got to be some kind of a deliberate act, maybe a crazy person or maybe a terrorist. We got in the car, got in the van that I had then, and we rushed down Fifth Avenue, and I got on the phone and reached the fire commissioner, other people, tried to get facts, my deputy mayor, tried to get facts about it. And as we were going down, you had to kind of bend down in the van to look up to see I could see the World Trade Center. It was a terrible fire, much worse than I expected to see. We got about a mile away, and there was a big explosion in the tower. And then immediately I got a call saying a second plane had hit the other tower.
Yeah.
And then I realized, of course, it was a terrorist attack. We were trying to reach the White House to get air support. We were trying to reach the governor to get National Guard help. We were trying to bring in as many police as we could. When I got down there, I pulled up about 4 blocks away. I stopped, got out, and I was met by my deputy mayors, several of them, the police commissioner, some of the fire officials, and I said, well, take me to the fire command post, because I want to see how bad it is and see what we need. And also, I want to get on television and radio and give people some instructions, but let me hear from the chief first what he needs. So we walked down to the World Trade Center. And as we were walking down, the police told me to look up because things were falling off the building and hitting people. So I was looking up and realized I wasn't watching things falling. I was watching a man throwing himself out of the 101st, 102nd floor. And I think that changed my whole thinking about it. I said to myself, this is much worse than we realized. I said to the people around me that we've never experienced anything like this before, and we don't have a playbook for this. We don't have a plan. We're just going to have to make it up. And what I meant by that was we had all kinds of plans. We had like 25 or so emergency plans for building collapses and train derailments and hurricanes, but we didn't have a plan for airplanes hitting buildings, going into buildings like missiles. And I met with the chief, Chief Gansey, who lost his life probably 20 minutes later, and I asked him what he needed. And he said, I can get everybody out below the fire. My guys can get everybody out below the fire. And interestingly, if you read the 9/11 Commission report, he just about did.
Yeah. Many more people than could have been
anybody
reasonably
thought.
expected.
He said, my guys can get everybody out below the fire. I can't get men above the fire because they'd have to go through this cauldron to get there. And it was a terrible feeling that I had when he said that, because I could look up there and I knew the people above the fire were doomed. But the strange thing about the whole experience was you had a second to feel that. Because
then you had to act.
Then you had to move on. I mean, under ordinary circumstances, I could have contemplated that for a day. But I had to say to myself, you've got to think of the way to get out of this rather than all the terrible things you're finding out about. And I got the information from him that he needed conveyed to the public. I asked him what kind of help he needed, put him together with the police commissioner so that the two of them could talk. What he really needed from the police was not so much rescue help. He had plenty of firefighters, although there were police officers in the building too. What he needed from the police was to get people away from the scene, because before the buildings came down, his real fear was all the things that were falling and hitting the people that were near the building. And I think he thought that was where he's going to have his major loss of life. So he wanted people were coming out of the building, and some of them were running away, but other ones were just staying there.
Yeah.
They would come out of the building and they would stand there and look up.
And what was the time frame at this point before the collapse?
This would be about 9:15, 9:20, 9:25.
And what time?
Maybe 10 minutes before.
10 minutes. They had
10
minutes
before
to
the collapse.
that building.
15. Of the times, I don't remember exactly now. But then I had the police department set up a command post in an office because we needed regular telephone lines, because the cell phones were working sporadically. They weren't working completely. They were going in and out, so you could get through. And I wanted to call the White House to make sure we had air support, to find out what else was coming, because at the time I didn't know if we were going to be attacked again.
Yeah.
I wanted to call the governor. So we went into this building about 2 blocks away that the police department commandeered, and I called the White House, and I found out that the Pentagon had been hit, and I was told that Vice President Cheney would call me back. I was also told that they were evacuating the White House, which gave me a sense that we were going to get hit again. And the Vice President called me back, but before he got through to me, the phone went out, and we got pelted with the first building that came down.
Yeah.
The building I was in got hit by that building, and we were trapped in that building for about 20 minutes, and then we got out.
Yeah. But I just wonder if there was anything about the way you were thinking during this period that surprised you, or that was, I mean, was this about your training, or was this about a spontaneous reflex, humanity in you? I mean,
I think it was about my training, really.
Your training.
I mean, I guess some of it's spontaneous, but I had been through a lot of emergencies as the mayor, as United States Attorney in the Justice Department. And there was a point when I was going through this when I said to myself, I know how to do this.
Yeah.
And I've done this before.
So you knew how to deal with crisis. You knew how to think quickly.
I did.
And problem
because
solve.
I had done it a lot throughout my life. And I
Just-
probably was better at dealing with crisis than I was just the ordinary things that go on.
You're a crisis mayor.
But people have strengths and weaknesses, and that was probably one of my
Do you
strengths.
think your training as a federal prosecutor was part of this? I mean, I want to ask you whether people will say that that kind of work will shape your character.
It does. It makes you, here's how it helped. It made me think on my feet.
Okay.
It taught me, before I was U.S. Attorney, I was an assistant U.S. Attorney. I was on trial a lot, in trials and appellate courts a lot. So I learned early in my career how to think on my feet, how to think quickly, and if something goes wrong, to kind of brush it off and not get overreacted, get stuck in it.
Right. Now, when you were prosecutor, you were involved in some very high-profile cases, particularly the insider trading cases.
Correct.
Ivan Boesky, Michael Milken.
Right.
Do you have a sense of deja vu now with what's going on? Have you thought about that? I mean,
Sure,
in a
quite a
sense,
bit.
you were involved so much in something similar.
Right.
You thought it was over. Now,
But I had that sense several times.
Yeah.
When we had Enron and WorldCom, and these come in cycles.
Yeah.
And people find, well, why does white-collar crime not go away? Well, why does any crime not go away?
So it didn't surprise you?
We had murder then, we have murder now.
But the degree to which it's returned.
It surprises you a little bit more because you would think people, these are well-educated, most cases, thoughtful people. You would think they'd learn from the mistakes. You think the deterrent value would work. But I guess human nature is human nature, and you can only change it so much. So it does somewhat surprise me that people think they can get away with these things after they see, for years, people being prosecuted, going to prison, being ruined, being scandalized. But
I'm going to stop you here because we're already out of time. Believe it or not, I have about 5 more questions I wanted to ask you about for this section, but we are going to come back and do a second part soon.
Terrific.
But I want to thank you so much
Thank you.
for
It was
being
a great
here
pleasure.
today.
Thank you.
And thank you for joining us today at the Drexel interview.